To care for those who once cared for us is one of the highest honors, according to Tia Walker. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, in keeping with our mandate to help, empower, and transform lives, joins with the international community in recognition of the United Nations World Elder Abuse Awareness Day 2022. World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, observed annually on June the 15th, aims to raise awareness about the range of issues affecting older persons. On this day, we join people all over the world to voice our opposition to any form of abuse of older persons in our population. The United Nations International Plan of Action described elder abuse as a public health. To care for those who once cared for us is one of the highest honors, according to Tia Walker. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, in keeping with our mandate to help, empower, and transform lives, joins with the international community in recognition of the United Nations World Elder Abuse Awareness Day 2022. World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, observed annually on June the 15th, aims to raise awareness about the range of issues affecting older persons. On this day, we join people all over the world to voice our opposition to any form of abuse of older persons in our population. The United Nations International Plan of Action described elder abuse as a public health and human rights issue. They indicated that globally, we have an aging population, and it is projected that the number of older persons will increase to 1.4 billion by 2030. In this country, we also have an aging population. More persons are living to 100 years and beyond. Many of them are unable to advocate for themselves or may be afraid to speak out against any abuse they might experience. The COVID-19 pandemic also presented several challenges for older persons, not just in terms of its impact on their health, but also in regards to their vulnerability to neglect, abandonment, and abuse. Furthermore, the pandemic has placed older persons at a greater risk of poverty, discrimination, and isolation. Recognizing the varied challenges some older persons experience, we have to be more proactive in caring for and protecting them. As the ministry that has been tasked with the responsibility of maintaining the social structure of our country, I wish to condemn incidents of abuse and appeal to members of our population to collaborate with government and all other stakeholders in restoring security and dignity to our elders. I wish to encourage individuals, families, and all citizens, if you see an older person being abused, say something. Don't hesitate to report the warning signs of elder abuse in your homes and within your communities. The Division of Agents 800 OPIC hotline is available for persons to report incidents of elder abuse, mistreatment, and neglect. Anonymous reports can be made to the Division of Agents hotline as well as via email at opic@social.gov.tt. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services urges all families and communities to foster a more caring and safe environment for our elders. It is our responsibility to love, respect, and protect those who tirelessly nurtured and cared for us, who contributed to our nation's development, and continue to serve as pillars of support to our societal foundations such as the family, faith-based, and community organizations. May God bless you. I thank you. To care for those who once cared for us is one of the highest honors, according to Tia Walker. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, in keeping with our mandate to help, empower, and transform lives, joins with the international community in recognition of the United Nations World Elder Abuse Awareness Day 2022. World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, observed annually on June the 15th, aims to raise awareness about the range of issues affecting older persons. On this day, we join people all over the world to voice our opposition to any form of abuse of older persons in our population. The United Nations International Plan of Action described elder abuse as a public health and human rights issue. They indicated that globally, we have an aging population, and it is projected that the number of older persons will increase to 1.4 billion by 2030. In this country, we also have an aging population. More persons are living to 100 years and beyond. Many of them are unable to advocate for themselves or may be afraid to speak out against any abuse they might experience. The COVID-19 pandemic also presented several challenges for older persons, not just in terms of its impact on their health, but also in regards to their vulnerability to neglect, abandonment, and abuse. Furthermore, the pandemic has placed older persons at a greater risk of poverty, discrimination, and isolation. Recognizing the varied challenges some older persons experience, we have to be more proactive in caring for and protecting them. As the ministry that has been tasked with the responsibility of maintaining the social structure of our country, I wish to condemn incidents of abuse and appeal to members of our population to collaborate with government and all other stakeholders in restoring security and dignity to our elders. I wish to encourage individuals, families, and all citizens. If you see an older person being abused, say something. Don't hesitate to report the warning signs of elder abuse in your homes and within your communities. The Division of Agents 800 OPIC hotline is available for persons to report incidents of elder abuse, mistreatment, and neglect. Anonymous reports can be made to the Division of Agents hotline as well as via email at opic@social.gov.tt. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services urges all families and communities to foster a more caring and safe environment for our elders. It is our responsibility to love, respect, and protect those who tirelessly nurtured and cared for us, who contributed to our nation's development, and continue to serve as pillars of support to our societal foundations such as the family, faith-based, and community organizations. May God bless you. I thank you. To care for those who once cared for us is one of the highest honors, according to Tia Walker. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, in keeping with our mandate to help, empower, and transform lives, joins with the international community in recognition of the United Nations World Elder Abuse Awareness Day 2022. World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, observed annually on June the 15th, aims to raise awareness about the range of issues affecting older persons. On this day, we join people all over the
Good morning, everyone. We are about to begin this morning's proceedings. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we begin with the national anthem of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Please remain standing as we are led into a time of prayer with Janika Gomes of the Division of Aging.
Good morning, everyone. Precious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for bringing us all here safely this morning. We ask that you would go before today's webinar. We thank you for all the listening and viewing audience. We pray that the information will be beneficial to them, Lord God, and that they would use that information and pass it on and share it to others. We thank you for our presenters. Thank you for blessing them with the wisdom, knowledge, Lord, to share the information. We thank you for equipping the ministry to be able to host such a webinar to benefit all of our citizens, not just the older folks, but the younger ones as well. And we just pray that you will continue to be in the midst of this presentation and that your will be done. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.
Minister of Social Development and Family Services, Senator the Honorable Donna Cox. Permanent Secretaries at the Ministry, Mrs. Jacqueline Johnson joining us virtually, and Mrs. Sheila Cicharan. Deputy Permanent Secretaries, Ms. Jasmine Pascal and Mrs. Guy Hernandez. Heads of the Division at the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, our esteemed presenters and panelists. Mr. Garth Thomas, Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago. Dr. Hyacinth Blake, Director, Division of Aging. Mr. Troy Pollinay, Director, Social Welfare Division. Our distinguished participants from home and abroad joining us online. Members of the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, welcome. My name is Nicole Larson and I will be your Master of Ceremony and moderator for today's webinar entitled Estate Planning and Financial Literacy to Combat Financial Abuse of Older Persons. I look forward to taking you through the proceedings this morning as we explore several areas of abuse on older persons. Today is World Elder Abuse Day. Our first speaker is no stranger to many of us as she takes on the lead role here at the ministry. All of her actions to date demonstrate that she cares and wants the best for the vulnerable in our country. Issues related to older persons are dear to her heart, and therefore today's webinar also provides a forum to hear about all that she continues to spearhead for older persons in Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, let's invite Senator the Honorable Donna Cox, Minister of Social Development and Family Services, to the podium to welcome and address you.
Thank you very much, Masters of Ceremonies. Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, Ms. Jacqueline Johnson and Ms. Sheila Sicharan. Deputy Permanent Secretaries, Director, Division of Aging, Dr. Hyacinth Blake. Other heads of divisions and staff at the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Webinar speakers and moderators, sign language interpreters, members of the media. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am pleased to welcome you today to the Ministry's Division of Aging webinar series on elder abuse, which focuses on the theme estate planning and financial literacy. And this webinar is held to commemorate World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, which was launched on June the 15th, 2006 by the International Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse and the World Health Organization at the United Nations. On this day, we join persons all over the world to voice our opposition to any form of abuse to the older citizen in our population. As someone who has the daily and absolute privilege of sharing my living space with my elderly mother, I have come to the realization that old age is precious. It's a precious treasure that takes shape in the journey of every man and woman's life, irrespective of their origin, their background, or their socio-economic conditions. I believe that life, with all its complexities, is a gift from God, and especially when it is long, it is a privilege both for oneself and for others. When I think about my mother's love and the sacrifices she made for me, I am extremely grateful. At this stage of her life, all I want to do is to ensure that she is protected and cared for. It is difficult for me to imagine that any son, daughter, or other relative will want to harm their elderly mother or father. But unfortunately, elder abuse is a widespread problem. There are instances of elder abuse where persons exploit their elderly loved ones financially by taking away their senior citizens' pension, property, and other valuables. You have probably heard of scams targeting seniors. In other cases, it's simple negligence. Caregivers may not always provide the basic necessities like nutritious food, appropriate medication, assistance with hygiene, or a safe environment for them to live in. The COVID-19 pandemic also saw an upsurge in challenges for older persons, not just in terms of their vulnerability to illness and complications, which caused a higher number of persons to succumb to the virus, but also the impact on their financial resources. Data from the Division of Aging of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service indicate that financial abuse is one of the more predominant types of elder abuse reported locally. In fiscal year 2022, the Ministry's Division of Aging recorded a total of 77 cases of abuse reported for the first quarter, of which 16 cases of financial abuse. And that is 21% of all cases reported. In fiscal year 2021, 27% of elder abuse cases reported were related to claims of financial abuse, while in fiscal 2020, about 18% of reported cases also involved alleged incidents of financial abuse. It is clear that financial abuse is a prevailing problem, and the ministry remains committed to highlight and work towards the prevention of elder abuse in all forms. Further to this, it must be noted that the number of elder abuse cases reported to the Division of Aging are relatively fewer compared to that reported to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Information received from the Crime and Problem Analysis Unit of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service revealed that between 2014 and 2020, the annual number of crimes against older persons each year ranged between 2,122 to 2,934. Additionally, during this period, the highest number of cases occurred in 2019, which is the same year that the government of Trinidad and Tobago increased the value of the senior citizens pension. So there is a relation there. Furthermore, of the 18,036 criminal offences committed against older persons between January the 1st, 2014 and May the 31st, 2021, theft and property loss amounted to 44.49%, and that was the most prevalent, followed by physical abuse, 36.3%, and financial abuse, 11.78%, so 12% more or less. Olivia Mitchell and Anna Marie Lusardi, in their article Financial Literacy and Financial Behavior at Older Ages, advised that due to the low levels of financial literacy among older persons, it is critical that financial guidance be put in place in order for older persons to protect their assets as well as to provide protection against scams and fraud. Additionally, their study concluded that better financial behaviors are strongly associated with greater financial literacy in later life. It is with this understanding today's webinar is being held to provide you with information that will empower you to make prudent financial as well as estate planning decisions. And this webinar includes discussion on several topics which are critical to deepening your financial literacy. And some of the topics to be covered include financial abuse of older persons in Trinidad and Tobago, will preparation and benefits of estate planning for older persons, what happens if you die without a will, and the role of the nominee family in securing senior citizens' pension. So I appeal to all the participants in this webinar and the national community to continue to partner with us in the battle against elder abuse in Trinidad and Tobago. In this regard, I encourage individuals, families, and all citizens, if you see an older person being abused, say something. Don't hesitate to report the warning signs of elder abuse in your homes and within your communities. The Division of Agents 800 OPIC, called OPIC, toll-free hotline is available for persons to report incidents of elder abuse, mistreatment, and neglect. Anonymous reports can be made to the Division of Agents hotline as well as via email at opic@social.gov.tt. The Older Persons Information Center, which means OPIC, is one of the most important and impactful initiatives of the division, as it has provided both voice and visibility to the elderly. And through this medium, the division has been able to make countless interventions on behalf of the elderly, offering them a measure of protection that was previously impossible. I wish therefore to commend the Division of Aging for leading this initiative and also for all those who have been involved in organizing this webinar. And I offer the Division of Aging my continued support. I thank you for the courtesy of your attention, and may God bless us all.
Thank you, Minister. And I want to concur with the Minister that it is unimaginable to me that persons would seek to perpetrate violence, any type of violence, on our elders. But the statistics show differently, hence the reason why we are here today. Next up is a feature presentation which will set the stage for the panel discussion this morning. I now invite Permanent Secretary Sheila Sicharan to address you.
Thank you, Master of Ceremonies and Moderator, Ms. Nicole Larson. Senator, the Honorable Donna Cox, Minister of Social Development and Family Services, Permanent Secretary at the Ministry, Ms. Jacqueline Johnson, our Deputy Permanent Secretaries, Ms. Wendy Guy Hernandez, and Ms. Jasmine Pascal, our esteemed presenters and panelists, Mr. Gar Thomas, Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Hyacinth Blake, Director, Division of Aging, Mr. Troy Pollinaire, Director, Social Welfare Division. Other members of staff at the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, virtual participants, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. It brings me great pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar as we commemorate World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. According to the census of 2011, 13% of the population of Trinidad and Tobago are over 60 years old. This percentage is projected to increase to 17.7% in 2025 and further grow to 30.1% by 2050. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, through its Division of Aging, continues to work diligently towards helping, transforming, and empowering the lives of older persons throughout Trinidad and Tobago. The World Health Organization describes elder abuse as a single or repeated act or lack of appropriate action occurring within any relationship where there is an expectation of trust which causes harm or distress to an older person. Elder abuse infringes on their human rights and can include physical abuse, psychological and emotional abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse, abandonment, and neglect. As we navigate through uncertain times, coupled with the increased vulnerability of older persons to succumb to complications associated with COVID-19, it has been recognized that estate planning and financial literacy is critical to maintaining financial stability. Further to this, local data points to older persons being highly vulnerable to financial abuse. Thus, it is important that older persons are equipped with the knowledge and tools to allow them to make prudent financial decisions to secure their assets. Hence, this year's webinar will be focused on the theme Estate Planning and Financial Literacy, and is aimed at providing a platform whereby education and awareness of elder financial abuse in TNT can be emphasized, while highlighting solutions and generating recommendations that can be used to curb elder abuse. This webinar is also expected to achieve the following. Firstly, an increase in the number of persons reporting elder financial abuse. Secondly, sensitization and awareness of financial literacy for older persons. Thirdly, sensitization and awareness on the preparation of wills and estate planning for older persons, and also a reduction in the incidence of elder financial abuse locally by ensuring proper reporting to the Ministry's Older Persons Information Center, which we refer to as OPIC, and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services will continue to engage in activities like these, which will allow further research and opportunities to engage stakeholders and also highlight the support mechanisms that are necessary to ensure that our older persons are treated with the care, respect, and honor that they so richly deserve. I am confident that this webinar will play a significant role in this endeavor. Do have a productive session. Thank you.
Thank you, Permanent Secretaries P.S. Sitaran. We are now moving to the heart of the matter today, where we will hear from 3 panelists on 4 important areas related to abuse of older persons. The first presenter is Garth Thomas. Mr. Garth Thomas is a Hall of Fame member of 2 venerable institutions, his alma mater, Trinity College, and also the Trinidad and Tobago Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors. He is the executive director of his 3 companies, Comprehensive Planners and Associates Limited, Getstro Services Limited, and Tomco Financial Services Limited. He holds the Toastmasters International designations, ACG Advanced Communicator Gold, and CL Competent Leader. He is a facilitator of the Central Bank's National Financial Literacy Program. He has been the top individual agent of the Trinidad and Tobago Unit Trust Corporation for 12 years. He was the first full-time executive director of Trinidad and Tobago Youth for Christ, 1972 to 1976. He's a strong believer in the human potential. He sees himself as a human becoming. His mission is to become the best that he can be by helping others to become the best that they can be. Please welcome Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Of all the fools who flocked to swell or see the show, who cared about the corpse? The funeral made the attraction, the black, the woe. There throbbed not there a thought which pierced the pole. And when the gorgeous coffin was laid low, it seemed like the mockery of hell to fold the rottenness of 80 years in gold. That was a quotation from the poem entitled Vision of Judgment by the English poet Lord Byron. Madam Moderator, Minister of Social Development and Family Services, Senator the Honorable Donna Cox, Permanent Secretaries of the Ministry, Ms. Jacqueline Johnson and Ms. Sheila Sicharan, Deputy Permanent Secretaries, Ms. Jasmine Pascal and Mrs. Wendy Guy Hernandez, Heads of Division at the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, our other esteemed presenters, Dr. Hyacinth Blake, Director of the Division of Aging, and Mr. Troy Polanyi, Director of Social Welfare Division. Our distinguished participants from home and abroad joining us online, members of the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I started my presentation with that quotation for a number of reasons. One is a bit nostalgic because it takes me back to the time I spent in sixth form at Trinity College doing English literature. And we had to do Lord Byron, and we had to do the Vision of Judgment. And I have always remembered this particular quotation from that poem because it so graphically outlines one of the main events of our lives. And that is how it ties into this whole presentation this morning about the benefits of estate planning for older persons. And that was the main reason for my doing it, apart from the little nostalgia and the fact that it is one of my favorite quotations from English literature. So, we're talking about estate planning. The incident referred to in the quotation was the funeral of King George III. Now, I suspect that King George had quite an estate. What I am totally ignorant of is what kind of estate planning he might have put in place. But certainly, we can learn and appreciate the need for having a plan. So this morning, I want to share a couple of thoughts with you relative to estate planning in general, but in particular for older persons. So the first question, of course, is what is estate planning? Of course, some people might say, well, I don't have any estate to plan. The only plan that I need to have is to plan how to get an estate. But technically, everybody owns an estate. And estate planning is simply the process of making it clearly known how you want your estate to be handled after you pass, or if you are incapacitated and unable to handle things on your own. Most of us spend our whole lives trying to acquire stuff, most of which we will not be able to take with us beyond the grave, just like King George III. So, no matter how gorgeous the coffin is, the reality is that you can't take that beyond the grave. And your estate will not be able to go with you, no matter how much you love it. You've worked your whole life, you've made all kinds of sacrifices in order to acquire this estate. And therefore, it makes good sense to have a plan in terms of what is going to happen to that estate when you say bye-bye. But whilst it makes good sense, it is one of the things that most people neglect. So, what is an estate? All right? The things that comprise an estate would be cash, cars, clothes, jewelry, houses, investments, savings, retirement accounts, land, life insurance policies. All of these are aspects of your estate. And you should make some decisions as to what you want to happen to these things when you pass. So the most common estate planning definition is this: the process of making plans for the management and transfer of your estate after your death, using a will, trust, insurance policies, and other devices. All right? So the first thing is to have a clear idea of what your estate is made up of. You need to list all of the stuff that you have. All of the stuff that you have. Make a list. That is the first step in estate planning. And there are some mistakes, there are some common mistakes that you want to try to avoid, which a lot of people make these mistakes when they try to do an estate plan. First of all, let me say that, an estate plan is not as daunting a thing as it might sound. Although if you go online, you will find that there are many various agencies who talk about estate planning and who make it sound so overwhelming that you will need to use their services. Well, I am not knocking the need to get a good financial advisor or to engage the services of an attorney. Those are important things to have. But I'm saying that you don't have to be overwhelmed by this thing. Boy, I have to make an estate plan and I don't know where to start. All right? There's no need for that. The thing is pretty straightforward. And especially once you acknowledge the need for engaging the services of some professionals who you can trust. Very, very important. People who you can trust. If you don't know anybody, then you're looking for somebody who you know who can give you a reference. All right? So some of the mistakes you want to avoid is first of all, not having an official plan. Then some of us put a plan in place, but with the passage of time, things change, circumstances change, and we don't update that plan. So you want to make sure you refer to that plan from time to time, you review it, and update it as necessary. Another mistake, not making arrangements for if you become incapacitated. All right? Another mistake, improper ownership of assets. Now, one of the problems we have in our society in Trinidad and Tobago is that we're not good at record keeping. And if you don't keep good records, then the estate planning process is going to become more difficult. So you need to take the time to really identify all of your assets. And I gave you that kind of a list of which these things will comprise. So if you might own stuff and you really don't have any title to it, you have no legal evidence that you own it, you need to put that in place. You need to get that organized, because if you don't have legal title, the ability to pass it on is compromised. Another mistake people make is that they don't appoint a guardian for children or others who would need their care. Underestimate the implication of taxes. Now, that's not a huge problem in Trinidad and Tobago because of the suspension of our Estate and Succession Duties Act. Not having liquidity of assets, not making gifts during your lifetime to reduce the value of the estate after passing in order to make it tax efficient. And the other common mistake is putting a child's name on the deed to property. That can trigger some really difficult circumstances which you really want to avoid. So you want to bear these things in mind and initiate an estate plan. Obviously, anytime you say plan, you are presupposing that you have a purpose, an objective. So you really need to clarify your thinking in terms of, what do I want to do with all or not so much, as the case may be, of the assets that you have acquired during your lifetime? Do you want to have any charitable organizations benefit from your assets? If you have real good ties to your alma mater, do you want that school or that college or that university to benefit from when you pass? Your life insurance policies, have you taken care in identifying beneficiaries on those policies? And do you know the implications of putting, for instance, a child as a beneficiary in a life insurance policy and creating what we call an irrevocable trust? All right? All of these, there are a lot of potential problems that may occur in your developing this plan. And that is where you really want to be able to identify at least two professionals in terms of creating this estate plan. And giving yourself, the assurance that all of your sacrifices and all of the difficulties that you went through in order to acquire this estate, that it is not defeated upon your death. All right? So there are two professionals that you want to look at. You want to get a good insurance and financial advisor. And the second thing is that you want to get a good attorney. Those are two critical professionals that can assist you in the developing of the plan and in giving you guidance as how the plan can be executed when you are not here. So I have touched briefly on a lot of different aspects of the estate planning exercise because the time does not allow us to go into any great details, but I'm sure that you will have questions. And during the question and answer session, I will be happy to try and expand on any particular aspect of estate planning. I'm not too sure what my time is looking like. How much more time do I have? All right. Okay. I want to touch very quickly on the issue of a will. It is good to have a will, but it is not absolutely necessary to have a will. There are ways that you can make provision for the passing of an estate outside of a will. And on my next session, I'm going to talk about that, a whole bit about dying without a will. But you can make things easy because upon your death, liquidity is important. That's an important part of the estate planning process, to provide liquidity. You can provide liquidity by naming a beneficiary. All right? Now, in particular, in terms of the unit trust corporation, you can name a beneficiary on an account. And when you name a beneficiary on an account with the unit trust corporation, that money will pass to the beneficiary without the need for a will. It will go directly to the person or persons that you identify. If you identify more than one person, the money will be split equally among them. And all that is required is the presentation of a death certificate to certify that you have in fact passed, and of course identification of the people who are the recipients of that money. So that is one way that you can provide liquidity. It takes no time. You go into the corporation, you carry necessary information, and you can get the money the same day. You can get it transferred to your own account by a check or whatever. Same kind of thing applies with an account in a credit union. All right, the credit union laws have been amended to allow for a payout of up to $50,000 to a named beneficiary on the account. Those are little things that you want to pay some attention to, because at the time of death, liquidity is an important issue, and you want to treat with that in your estate plan. So if you have any other questions, I will be happy to try and expand on these things when we come to the question and answer session, which is no. Well, not quite no.
Right now, because we have a number of questions for you, Mr. Thomas. We really have to appreciate the benefits of estate planning for the elderly and how important it is for the elderly. Mr. Thomas, my first question would be, and we've had a number of questions, and it would be, when we talk about an estate, are we speaking about a large expanse of land or a big building? What is an estate?
Yes. Excellent question. And the word tends to bring that kind of a thing to mind. You know, you have an estate in the country, acres of land and so on. Well, that can be a part of an estate, but an estate is all the things that you own. Your estate, all your clothes, all your bags, all your shoes, whatever money you have in a bank account, unit trust, credit union, life insurance policies, cash, or jewelry, all of these things comprise your estate.
So everything that is dear to you comprises of your
everything
estate.
that you own, that you
Everything
have
that you
ownership
own.
on. Yeah. So of course that will include if you have house and land and land in the country.
Yes, yes.
All right, that would be all part of it. But it is not limited to those things. The smaller things which people tend to overlook are all part of your estate, and you should treat with it in that manner.
What are some of the things, very briefly, because I know that you have to come back to talk about wills, which is going to be another point by itself.
Yeah.
And what are some of the things that you, in your capacity as a financial advisor, have seen that we have been doing wrong when it comes to estate planning? Because it does sound quite large.
Yes. I think the biggest problem is the psychological problem that people think it is something that is so overwhelming that, you know, it's like just like the need to do a will. Everybody will say, I really need to do a will, you know, but some people have the phobia that if I do a will, I'm going to die. You know, there's no logic to it, but it's there, and it is a subconscious element that keeps people from doing what they're supposed to do, and that applies to nearly all the aspects of estate planning. You know, I always remember when I first came into the life insurance field that my manager used to talk about the mortality of man, but the immortality of self. And what he was getting at there is that everybody knows they're going to die, that they have to die at some time, but it's not going to be today.
Yes.
All right. When we all left home this morning, all of us left home with the expectation that we're going back home this evening. But some of us will not be going back home this evening. But it's not me.
I thank you so much this morning for your presentation. Very, very enlightening, and we're looking forward to the second half where you will talk about wills.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Thank you so very much.
It was my pleasure.
We continue this morning, and I know that, and I have to remind you, please, if you are online, and I know that you are persons online, you need to post those questions. We are looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Our next presenter is Dr. Blake, Dr. Hyacinth Blake. Dr. Hyacinth Blake has been employed as the Director of the Division of Aging in the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services from August 24th, 2020 to present. She is a graduate of the University of Sheffield, United Kingdom, after successfully completing a joint location PhD in sociological studies. Her thesis focused on family care for frail older persons, social policy implications for Trinidad and Tobago. Prior to this, she completed her Masters of Science in Sociology with an emphasis on social policy at UWI Mona in 2003 and a BSc. Today, she is going to be speaking to us on the level of humanization in community homes for the aged in Trinidad and Tobago. She will be actually speaking today on financial abuse of older persons in Trinidad and Tobago.
Good day, everyone. It is indeed my pleasure to be here to speak to you on this issue, though it is one that makes us a bit sad to know that our elders are being abused. I want to say all protocols observed. I thank the executive of the ministry, including the Honorable Minister, for hosting this event alongside and partnering with, of course, the Division of Aging. So thank you to all our online viewers and to Mr. Thomas who has presented, and we look forward to the rest of the day. So to just move forward as to what we're discussing about, the main areas would be a definition of elder financial abuse, quantitative data on EFA in Trinidad and Tobago, the impact of EFA on elders, and tips for preventing elder financial abuse. And interspersed between the presentations, I will be highlighting some qualitative results on this issue that I would have acquired during my PhD research. So let's start with that definition. Now, definitions are never straightforward. We must not assume that they are. A simple definition of EFA is that it is sometimes referred to as financial exploitation, defined as someone illegally or improperly using an elder's money or belongings for their own personal use. Now, generally, the victim must experience some disadvantage for it to be considered elder abuse, but also in some jurisdictions, the perpetrator must also have some kind of advantage, and that has to do with defining this particular phenomena vis-a-vis legal implications of such an act. Now, more practically speaking, examples of EFA include, it could be the neighbor, the carer, unfortunately, professionals, and even relatives, sadly, who may take, use, or misuse money or property without knowledge or permission. So they do it on the sly. Fail to repay money owed to the elder. So I borrow, and I never really give it back. Overcharging for services, so that kind of contractor scam. Fail to provide services already paid for, so it's just promissory. Misuse of ATMs or credit cards. Stealing the cash of the older person through checks, and unfortunately we have seen this happening locally with regards to the senior citizens pension, and so Mr. Pauline from Social Welfare Division will be discussing how we will address that. And general misappropriation of the funds from the pension, so it's entrusted to someone, but at the same time they are not using it to really care for the elder. We've heard reports of people building their house while the poor elder is suffering. Now, here's a quote from one of the carers I interviewed, who I will call Timothy. Of course, I'll keep their identity anonymous, so this is not actually his name. So Timothy shared this with me. I just went through a little crisis with him. That's his father. He complained about handling his finances, so I left it to him. And he ended up giving away all his money. I never argue with him, you know. He called me and told me he want me to help him. So I say, well, okay. Well, let me go and see what happened. I checked all the accounts. And you know what? I said to him, you realize it's all gone. So you okay if I take back charge of it? He said yes. So Timothy's dad was in his 80s, and he had one of those special friends, you know, coming by. And he really was also generous. And it just goes to show that despite what I just said earlier about examples of EFA, there are times when it is not necessarily the case. So we don't rush to judgment, because maybe it was just a matter of mishandling the resources that an elder had, that they themselves might have done. So this is why persons like Mr. Thomas coming and sharing is so pivotal, so that we can avoid those mishaps. Now here are some other examples of elder financial abuse. Forging or forcing an older person's signature, abusing joint signature authority on a bank account. So whereas we spoke about, the unit trust account having the beneficiaries, you don't want to abuse that prematurely or at all. All right, while the elder is alive, if you are a joint signatory, check in with them as to how those finances should be used. Getting an older person to sign a deed, will, contract, or power of attorney through deception, coercion, or undue influence. And this is real. We've seen this coming to us within the Division of Aging. Improperly using the authority provided by a conservatorship, so that somebody may have been assigned to care for an older person and be responsible for all their needs. Maybe the elder has a cognitive limitation and they have taken advantage of that. Denying older persons access to their money or preventing them from controlling their assets. So, it is a balancing act. Timothy would have experienced delegating to his dad. Well, not delegating, it was really his father's money. So you have to give them that autonomy. But at the same time, just because there might be some concerns, you still have to get their input as to how their own money is spent. So here's another quote from my chat with Lakshmi. She would have been part of a Tobago focus group with caregivers in 2014, and she shared, "I have a sister living close to my father in Trinidad, I must say. And when he gets sick to go in the health center, he said, call the one in Tobago. But she come in and study what he has. And that's not fair. He plant a little tomato, they picking and carrying, he little melangen, he little pepper and thing. They full in the bag and go on by and bring nothing back for him. And yet they want to know when he did what I doing with his share. Because the day when he buy the land and we get the deed, he tell me, child, you carry this to Tobago with you. Because anything happen to me, they will take it. My sister gone and asking the old man how she could take the deed. But when the house was billing, she ain't put a farthing. She even sell my father a van for $20,000. That is the old man comfort. Unfortunately, this is not just a story. This is not made up. This is actually what happened. And sadly, Lakshmi is not the only daughter who would have experienced this kind of dynamic with her siblings. Some other signs of EFA include missing belongings or property, example, jewelry, unusual or unexplained banking activity, unpaid bills, eviction or foreclosure notices or notices to discontinue utilities despite having adequate funds for that, the elder's unawareness of or confusion about recently completed financial transactions even when they're cognitively sound, decline in personal grooming or an absence of clothing, food or other basic necessities, so their basic human rights are infringed, unkempt residents when arrangements have been made for providing care. So their house is falling apart, the roof is not fixed, it's leaking, the grass is growing. Untreated medical or mental health problems. Another quote is from Ravindra, another carer within a Trinidad focus group in 2014. It costs roughly $40,000 TT a month to have full-time care for my mom. He and his siblings, there were about 8 or 10 of them putting up to ensure she had in-home private residential care. Every one of her children gives. In fact, we just had to up it a bit because the carers are complaining this money ain't enough. They have to be washing clothes and cleaning mom. When my mom lost her leg in a simple operation, it hasn't been easy. Some caregivers tend to bring a whole load of baggage with them. Recently, when we were having one of our family conferences, we were saying, you want quality care, but you're paying minimum wages. If you cannot afford to pay big money for people who are taking care of your loved ones, you're going to have a mix of persons who just trying to make it because the salary is small. We had a terrible incident recently whereby one of the care workers apparently went upstairs where my sister lives and took almost $6,000 TT. So stealing, theft by the paid carers. We mentioned earlier, well, through the quote, that family, children could do it, but also the paid care workers as well, and that's really unfortunate. Some other signs of EFA that I'll go through quickly before moving on to some quantitative data include defensiveness or hostility by the caregiver during visits or on the phone. They don't want you to hear or engage with the elder. Social isolation of the elder, new acquaintances or best friends, as I mentioned before. The elder is afraid or worried when talking about money because they're being threatened in the background probably. A noticeable increase in the spending of people living with or caring for the older person while they're not doing too well themselves. carers or family members who express excessive interest in the amount of money being spent on the older person, and a promise of lifelong care, and the threat that if they don't give whatever finances, that care will not be provided. Now, some quantitative data I'll go through quickly because, of course, through the Honorable Minister and our Permanent Secretary, you would have gotten some of the statistics on what's happening locally. But based on what we're seeing from the Crime and Problem Analysis Unit, the data we receive from the TTPS through that department, we observe that when it comes to fraud, it might seem that it's a very small figure on that third column there, where you're seeing the 711. That's about 14% of all the serious offenses that were posed to our elders. Now, 14% might seem very small, but if you add in the other items, the other variables, such as breaking offenses, larceny, dwelling house, theft in any form, theft of their car and so on, loss of assets, it amounts to about 66% altogether. So that just goes to show that financial abuse locally is something that we really, really need to put a stop to. And again, I thank you for joining us to learn how to avoid it. Now, in terms of gender, generally, for all offenses, including financial abuse, the reports to the TTPS indicate that men are more likely than women to report being victims of this offense. So that it would be a ratio of about 7 to 3. 70% of men versus 30% of women across the years. Now, in terms of where this crime occurs and all crimes of elder abuse, it's not surprising that it occurs in the more densely populated areas of Trinidad and Tobago, where most of our elders could be found. So you would find that the Northern Division of the TTPS is where we get most of the reports. Now, the Division of Aging also takes note of the reports that we receive with regards to financial abuse and other forms of abuse. And as the Honorable Minister and PS indicated, we saw somewhat of an increase, especially between 2020, 2021. There was a slight increase and then a slight dip afterwards, but it still cause for concern. The impact of elder abuse on our older persons. Well, who wants to be homeless? None of us. And unfortunately, some of our elders do lose their residence and end up in maybe the hospital or so and are abandoned. They may lose their car, as I mentioned with Lakshmi's father, and those things are very, very sad indeed. Their utilities are unpaid. We saw a case in the division where an elder was left alone, neglected, but at the same time, we're seeing persons squandering their money and they had no basic lights and water and that sort of thing. Loss of trust and an increased skepticism of everyone. So you have these psychological impacts as well. Feelings of depression, fear, shame, loss of dignity, and of course getting angry, understandably. Depleted physical health due to stress or the inability to afford proper care or nutrition. So an early demise, alcoholism or other risky and destructive behavior, and possibly dependence on government assistance, despite the fact that they would have had their personal assets before. Now, this is a very sad state of affairs. And again, we don't want this for ourselves, so we should not do it to our elders. To conclude my presentation, I would like to give you all some more tips as to how to prevent elder financial abuse. So here's an example from Uncle Wilton. He was in his late 90s when I spoke to him, and he shared this snippet about how he was being cared for by his relatives. Well, I give my niece Trisha money because she see after me. I just give this next one, Mr. Birch, a few dollars. He was a neighbor. Because he see after my medication, every month I give him. My niece, she does draw my pension. She bring the money for me. I will give her so much to last out the month, and I save back the balance in the bank. It on my name and her name, joint account. Ain't no problem with that. If she buy anything, note this point, she bring the receipt for me. I'm sure about that. I gave her yesterday to pay the phone bill. She said, I owe you $4. I say, you will bring back the $4? He said in astonishment. So Uncle Wilson is an example of an elder who was able to identify members in his circle, his social circle, who were trustworthy. And at the same time, there was an accountability system. He wasn't taken for granted, and they did not take for granted his generosity. So to prevent elder financial abuse, and of course, this list is not exhaustive. Some of the things you can do is as Mr. Thomas said, plan ahead to protect your assets. If you become a millionaire and you're at 18, sure, do a will, exactly, you know. But on average, the age for doing a will, based on the international data, is around 47. I'm close to that. But anyways, it's not about me. Carefully choose a trustworthy person to act as your agent in all estate planning matters. Lock up your checkbook. Don't have it lying around. Note even your account statements and other sensitive financial information. Keep it in a safe place. If you have your something at home that you can lock it away, that's fine. Check references and credentials before hiring anyone. Don't just assume because they're on social media or they had how many likes, but you know, get someone who maybe have used that service that you know, and as Mr. Thomas said, get that referral. Don't allow workers to have access to just any information about you while they're in your house doing work. Never rush into a financial decision. Pausing can save your money. Pay with checks and credit cards instead of cash to keep a paper trail. So I always get emails and texts whenever I use my credit card. So I know what my balance is and I know that it was used, especially in these times when you could just tap to spend. And feel free to say no. After all, it is your money. So thanks for listening, and I look forward to answering your questions.
This has been so very insightful for us this morning from Dr. Blake as she continues to speak about financial abuse of older persons here in Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, we're going to be fielding your questions. So we're looking forward to hearing from you this morning, Dr. Blake.
Hi, it's a pleasure to sit and chat with you again, Ms. Larson.
Always a pleasure. Financial abuse is not one of them.
No, it's not at all.
So let's talk a little bit about the older person, and this is one of the questions we are seeing here, the older person who has no family support and they're financially challenged.
Yes. So, you know, that's a very sad situation. But thankfully, if you are 60 years of age and older, you know, you can come into the Division of Aging and we can connect you with the various supports that there are available. So you can access, maybe if you have not reached the age for a pension, and Mr. Paul and I will share more about that. If you're not 65 years of age just yet, we can connect you with Social Welfare Division and see if maybe you will be able to access public assistance or some other, you know, form of service. If it is that you need counseling and that kind of support or care, we can connect you with, let's say, the National Family Services Division, the Geriatric Adolescent Partnership Program, and so on. Now, even the NGO unit, there might be NGOs within your area that will provide that social connection. So you can access that kind of support within the ministry also.
So there's provision step by step for an elderly person. They don't have to feel as though they're all alone.
Exactly. So give us a call at 800-OPIC. That's 800-OPIC. Let us know if this is the situation. Unfortunately, some persons, you know, their relatives may have passed away. They may have migrated. There might be some form of family estrangement. Cases can be complex. So this is why we use a multi-departmental, multi-institutional approach and see how best we can assist.
Okay, our next question is, how do you preserve the confidentiality, the dignity of a senior citizen from feuding adult children who seem only to be interested in the person's money? I know that you touched on it, but let's see if you can go again. Is this a concern likely to be addressed in any changes to the current legislation?
Well, I believe that it would be a focus of legislation because to start with, we would want to develop an elder abuse policy which would touch on financial abuse as well. So this is one of the issues or key tasks and activities that the division has started to go forward with in the very near future. So that in itself will impact legislation. But practically speaking, when it comes to maintaining the dignity of the elder and so on, I can say that in terms of our operating procedures, if somebody would like to lodge a complaint, you know, they have a concern, it's not at the level where they want to report to the police just yet, they can call us and let us know, you know, I want this to be anonymous. I want you to know that this is my concern. I don't want to upset this one. Now, of course, there are some things we must report to the TTPS, but at the same time, we use a restorative justice approach. We engage the very professional and highly skilled staff of the National Family Services Division to give counsel. And if necessary, we engage the Victim and Witness Support Unit, and they will engage with the family accordingly if that is what the elder wants. But we do ask them what it is that they desire in terms of how we go forward with the case.
So you speak to the elder?
Yes.
Get how they feel before you make any decisions?
Yes. It is only in, of course, extreme instances where it is, in fact, an infringement of the law. They've been physically abused, because usually financial abuse is subsumed under other forms or connected to other forms of abuse. Then we will give them the option. We will encourage them, you know, if it's really that serious, you may want to take this further. But we do it very sensitively, and we counsel them accordingly.
So once again, the person who is being abused, the elderly, who is being abused, but is totally dependent on that person who is doing the abuse. The difficulty to come out of that situation, who do they talk to? Do they talk to a neighbor? I know we have a number of numbers that we can call.
So if you have no one that you can talk to, you can call us. That's what we're here for. So that's 800 OPIC, that's 800-6742. It's a toll-free hotline. If for some reason you find it difficult to use the phone, maybe you have a limitation, a disability, or so on, we would say tactfully try to engage someone that you trust. As you said, it might be a neighbor if you see it's not the children or the relatives, and have that conversation when you believe that it is safe to do so, where they may not overhear what you're saying. We know it might be challenging for persons who may have maybe a hearing challenge or a vision challenge, and if that is the case, you can discreetly, you don't necessarily have to say what your intentions are. You know, I want to find out about services from the Division of Aging. Would you mind giving me a call? Now, our staff, the staff at the division, were trained in psychological first aid recently, and one of the things we noticed to ask the elder on the call, you know, do you feel that you're free to talk? Are you by yourself? You know, this sort of thing. And if necessary, we'll in fact visit the elder. Of course, we do that triage approach because it is the pandemic, and we don't want to spread the COVID at all. But that is an option. If we find that it is difficult to ensure their safety via phone call, it may require a visit. Of course, with other stakeholders, like family services.
Yes. You know what I'm taking out of this, on this World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, that there is hope.
Yes.
Despite we are talking about all the atrocities, there is hope.
Yes.
And so we're grateful to the ministry. Thank you very much, Dr. Blake. It has been quite insightful. Painful a little bit, but insightful.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you so very much. We continue this morning, and we are looking forward to our next presenter. He is going to make his way back to us. No stranger. That is Mr. Garth Thomas, and he is the facilitator of the Central Bank's National Financial Literacy Program. He is back this morning to talk about wills. Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Nicole. And a great morning to all again. Well, you know the old saying, where there's a will, there's a way. And where there is no will, it's going to be difficult for you to find your way, at least for your beneficiaries to find their way. So what happens, the question is, what happens if you die without a will? The legal term that is used to describe that situation is intestacy. You die intestate. And that means that you have left no instruction. You have not listened to my and followed through on my advice in my earlier presentation to create a plan for the distribution of your assets or of your possessions when you die. So you die intestate. You die without having left any specific directions. What this means is that your beneficiaries, people who may have been looking after you for a long time and who you would have wanted to inherit some of your stuff, that they are going to have a difficult time being able to take possession of that stuff. Yeah? So the will is an instrument. It is not the only instrument, but it is an instrument through which you can direct how you want what you have worked so hard for all these years, how you want that to be distributed. And in the absence of that, there are laws in Trinidad and Tobago, as in other countries throughout the world, intestacy laws. And I'm not going into the intestacy laws in any detail here. I want to encourage you, We live in this age of technology. There's something called Google. And if you Google intestacy laws in Trinidad and Tobago, you will get all of the detailed information. Suffice it to say that if you die without a will, that the state has provided a structure for the distribution of your assets. So technically, you have a choice of saying, look, this is how I want my stuff to be distributed when I die. If you do not exercise that choice, then you have made a different choice. You have made the choice that the state will distribute it according to a fixed and very strict structure that is ensconced in the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. So you really have to say to yourself, which do I prefer? Do I want to direct it, or do I just want it to go the way that the state has stated it will go in the absence of direction from me? So I want to say that you really want to give this issue significant priority. Okay, because there may be people, actually the person who may have looked after you in your old age, and if you've been ill prior to dying, that person may not get anything at all, dependent upon their relationship with you or if they're related to you or not. And you might want that person to benefit from the exercise. So you need to put the thing in place beforehand. Now, one of the challenges that people face with regard to doing a will is the cost. People say, oh gosh, boy, I don't have the money to do that. And dependent upon the size of your estate, the value of your estate, that should be a determining factor. But let me just say, for instance, if the size of your estate is $1 million, and you do a will, all right, it will cost, upon your death, that will has to be probated. It has to go through a probate process. And the legal fees and other ancillary fees attached to that process will range somewhere between $20,000 and $50,000 for an estate the size of $1 million. And therefore, that has a cost which, as I said in my earlier presentation, you can provide for that cost by using beneficiary designations on short-term cash or on other investments that you may have. So as a part of the estate planning process, you should really be saying, I need to have some money. If I don't already, I need to have some money in a credit union because that will provide some liquidity. I'm not too sure what the time period is. I think it varies from credit union to credit union. But once there's a named beneficiary, you should not encounter any significant problems in getting that up to $50,000 paid. On a unit trust account, you will not, it is very speedy. You can allocate beneficiaries on the account. This is as against a joint holder. Joint holder has authority whilst you are alive, dependent upon how you structure that joint holdership. All right? But the beneficiary is very clear-cut. So if you have 4 children, you can make 4 children your beneficiaries. That money, there is no cost whatever, whereas there's a cost of probate. If you use the beneficiary designation, there's no cost. Similarly, if you have insurance policies where you name beneficiaries, there are provisions made for that money to be passed on to your beneficiaries without the need to go through the probate process. In the absence of those kinds of provisions, what has to happen if you die without a will is that you have to apply to the courts for letters of administration. And those letters of administration will be given based upon the structure set up in the intestacy laws. All right? Who has priority? Who is the person who can apply for these letters of administration? Who is entitled to apply for it? And then what is that person's responsibility in terms of the distribution of the assets when it is received? All right? So you either have a will, which will have to be probated, and there are costs associated with that. Or if in the absence of a will, letters of administration have to be applied for, and there are legal costs relative to the application for letters of administration. And there is also a time factor which you cannot control. And there's a saying, time is money. So you want to be sensitive to that. And you want to make as comprehensive a preparation, a plan that will treat with those realities. Because when you are gone, of course, you can do nothing about it. And the buck is now in the hands of your loved ones who may have been looking after you and who you would have wanted to benefit in a tax-efficient manner, in a timely manner, and with the least cost associated to it. So all of those are issues that are triggered by someone who dies without having a will. Now, I don't want to, I want to keep some clarity in the presentation here by saying that there are options available, okay? It is desirable, dependent upon the size of your estate, you may need to make some decisions as to whether you want to go the route of doing a will or not. Now, there's another issue relative to the route of doing a will, and that is that in doing a will, you have to name an executor. Now, at some time, one of the banks, I'm not going to call any name, but one of the bank trust services had offered an opportunity for people to do their will, and the bank will act as an executor. Now, I recommended many of my clients to use that service because there was no upfront cost. And the understanding was that when death occurred and the will had to be probated, that the trust company would take their fees out of the estate. And that those fees would not be exorbitant because those fees would be pretty much market. To my disdain, to my disgust, to my total upset, I found out subsequently that the bank can decline, the trust company can decline executorship. So here you have made a provision, you have made an executor, and the executor declines the responsibility upon your death. Now, if the will does not have an executor, it cannot be probated. So you have a problem there immediately. So you need to give some thought toward having who you're going to name as an executor, and the document can allow you as well to name a secondary person, because obviously the executor can die just before you do or just after you do, in which case the will has nobody to execute it, and it cannot be probated without an executor. All right? So you may want to look at that very carefully. It is a very, very important point, because your best intentions could be frustrated if you overlook these little things. All right? Now, that is why I am very strong for people with relatively small estates. My strongest recommendation is that you use beneficiary designations. Now, I cannot speak to the situation at the banks, but I can tell you that in credit unions, I'm big on credit unions because credit unions are people-based institutions, and they have no, they have no other people to adhere to cater to except their membership. And therefore, a well-run credit union, you can name your beneficiary on your accounts. If you have credit union accounts and you do not have beneficiaries named, my advice to you is name a beneficiary, at least one beneficiary, and you can have a contingent beneficiary. All right? Now, the same thing applies to life insurance policies. You can name a beneficiary, and it is recommended that you name a contingent beneficiary, because, like I say, suppose you are driving in your car with the person who is the beneficiary, and you all get into an accident, both of you all die at the same time. Then that whole beneficiary provision has been nullified. So you want to understand that life is what it is, and that these kinds of things do happen. So I'm saying, look at your life insurance policies. Call your life insurance agent let them give you some advice about naming a contingent beneficiary. All right? And, a lot of people have their insurance policies and the beneficiary's estate. Now, with the proclamation of the new Insurance Act, that whole estate beneficiary thing has been dealt with. I don't have the time to deal with that here now, but I'm just saying that provisions have been made and you need to look at that beneficiary designation on your insurance policies. And thirdly, I want to say that the simplest of the lot is that if you have accounts with the Unit Trust Corporation, it is very easy and it has no cost for you to name beneficiaries. And you don't have to name one beneficiary, you could name more than one beneficiaries. The protocol is that upon your death, the beneficiary, and if there are more than one beneficiaries, any one of the beneficiaries can carry in a death certificate, and whatever is their portion of your account, so if there are 4 people named as beneficiaries, it will be divided 25% per person, and no beneficiary can collect more than their 25%. So all 4 beneficiaries will have to go in and get their allotted portion. But the thing about that is that it can happen same day, and there is absolutely no cost. So I'm speaking particularly to people who may not have huge estates. You know, you may not have $1 million estate. All right? Although, if you are young enough, you can buy a life insurance policy, which is not real estate, it's an insurance estate. It is one of the ways where people who don't have a lot of money can acquire a significantly large estate without having to put out a whole lot of money. So don't discount the efficiency of a life insurance policy as a means, as one of the instruments of planning your estate, and one of the means of nullifying or minimizing or diminishing or eliminating completely the problems that are associated with dying without a will. Yes? So you really need to get some advice based upon the size of your estate. Does it make sense for me to do a will, or does it not? There are a lot of other things that are attendant upon this, which, you know, we don't have the amount of time to deal with it now, because there are some estates, depending upon the size, where it may make more sense to do a will than not to do a will, and vice versa. There's also the one instrument that I have not talked about is something called an inter vivos transfer. And that means to say that you distribute your assets prior to your death. And there are issues that are surrounding that in terms of control and so on like that. But again, this is just underlines the need for you to seek advice from the people who are familiar with this territory and who can give you some guidance and who you can trust. Obviously, you see that last one, who you can trust is such a very critical element in the whole thing. So, you know, the quality of your relationships will impact that decision. Thank you so much, and I trust that I have given you some useful information.
Indeed, you have certainly given us a lot of food for thought, especially when it comes to dying and thinking that, oh my goodness, when if I were to make a will, that would mean that I am actually setting up myself for death. You know, so I'm very grateful that you sort of dispel that myth for us, Mr. Thomas. One of the questions that we want to ask you, and it is, and thank you so much for this one, it says, if an older person makes a will via a lawyer and does not register it or files it at the Hall of Justice registry, is that will valid after death?
Yes, there is no legal requirement to register a will. Yes? It's an option that is available. That having done the will, you can go to the Hall of Justice and you can register the will. Yeah? But if you do not register the will, it does not invalidate the will. The will remains as valid once the will has been properly done and witnessed. Those are the critical things. All right? That if it's done and witnessed, then it is valid.
And I'm glad that you made that point about a witness. Now, can the person that is actually a part of the will be a witness?
It is not recommended.
It's not recommended.
It's not recommended. I am not an attorney, but to the best of my knowledge, if you are a beneficiary of the will, then you need some independent person, some person who has no, no contact, whatever, with regard to the will, to be the witness. Because, the issue of, especially if you're dealing with elder people, but it's not limited to that, the issue of the competence of the person who is doing the will and whose estate it is, whether they are mentally competent to in fact execute that thing, it's an issue which can create problems in terms of the probation of the will. Because some relative may come and say, but he's been suffering from dementia 10 years now. Look when the will was done. The will was done 5 years ago. All right. So his legal competence is held in question there. And those are some of the issues that will cause a will, the length of time that it takes to get a will probated will be impacted by that kind of a situation.
Right. Now, where is the best place to keep a will, and who should you inform that you have a will? And as well, can I change my mind? I've made a will this week, and you know what? Next week I've, due to circumstances, I want to change. Is that okay? Yeah,
you can always change your will, and you can do what they call a codicil to a will. If it is that, for instance, since you made the will, I talked about updating. Since you made the will, one of your children has had a baby boy, and you say, I want him to benefit from this will. So you don't have to go in and really change all of the provisions of the will. You can do a codicil to the will, which will speak to the inclusion of, or some amendment relative to the inclusion of another beneficiary. So when you do a will, it is not something that you cannot treat with in terms of change subsequently. But it is recommended that you review your estate plan. Remember, that's why we said the whole context of the estate plan, that you review the plan and you update it because of your changing circumstances. For instance, when I did my first will, my mother was in that will. My aunt was in that will. All right? Both of them have passed. So I should really update that will. So, changing circumstances would require you to speak with it. There was another question.
Where can we hide that will?
Where are you? Well, I don't know if you want to hide it.
Put it away, for safekeeping.
You have to find somebody of trust. It doesn't have to be a relative. For instance, I gave my will to my agency manager because he was somebody who I trusted, who not only did I trust, but he had the competence relative to how to treat with that. All right? So at the end of the day, you really need to find someone who you can trust. It could be within your family, it could be outside of your family. It depends upon your family situation. There are some families where there are high levels of trust. There are families where, boy, you wouldn't trust them as far as you could throw them, unfortunately. So you have to know your situation. And you may have a very close friend who, over all the years, you've known them, they're like a brother, they're like a parent or something like that. You need to lodge that will with that person. And that is my recommendation, because if you hide it away in a physical location, they may say you don't have a will. Nobody knows about the will, nobody knows about the existence of the will. So, to all intents and purposes, it looked like if you die without a will, intestate, in which case the circumstances that I outlined would apply.
The next question is coming up here is about property and a spouse. If you own a property with your spouse, and can or should you include this property
in a will?
Your will?
Well, in law, there is something called joint tenancy. Again, I'm not an attorney, but I know a bit about it. All right? There's joint tenancy and there are tenants in common. If both you and your spouse's name are on the deed, and the deed speaks to joint tenancy, that you all jointly own the property, in a joint tenancy situation, the death of either party will cause the property to be passed automatically without the need of a will. I'm happy you asked that question. Without the need for a will, in a joint tenancy situation, the asset will pass to the surviving joint tenant. But if you are tenants in common, because you can own a property jointly, but there's not a joint tenancy, it's tenancy in common. So again, you need legal advice to be able to establish whether in terms of the deed of ownership, whether it speaks to joint tenancy, or whether it speaks to being tenants in common. In tenants in common, you will need a will, because technically half of the property is yours and half is the other person's. So you and the other persons are entitled to say who must inherit your portion. Yeah? But it cannot speak to the whole property. It can only speak to your portion of the property. All right? So joint tenancy is a nice way to bypass the need for a will as well, because in a joint tenancy situation, like I said, it's automatic. There's no ifing and butting about anything. All right? The transition is a very smooth one.
I'm seeing another question here, and I'm wondering if you would have touched on this in your presentation about the legal redress to older persons. What legal redress do they have against those who abuse them physically or financially, for example?
I am not very familiar with that. I'm not too. As I said a little earlier, you know, I like to bat within my crease. I'm not too sure what the legal redress is for either of those situations. All right. Now, in terms of the financial abuse, you know, we have a financial ombudsman. I am not too sure if within the purview of the financial ombudsman's responsibilities, if that kind of abuse, whether it falls within that remit. Yeah. But I would say those would be the kind of places. The police, this ministry, and the financial ombudsman will be your options in terms of reporting. Yeah? And I guess the OPIC, well, I only learned about OPIC today. So OPIC might be an option relative to that as well.
You know, I'm very happy we have been enlightened, and I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of everyone on the webinar. The importance of making a will, and it's not that you are going to die, but basically it's to take care of your assets when you die. And if you love your loved ones, you're going to make plans for them and not put them through this whole situation of. So I want to thank you so very much. Any final closing comments as you talk about a will?
Yeah, well, I just want to emphasize that if you love those that that you may be leaving behind, that you want to make sure you organize your business in such a way for speed and efficiency. You know, those are two of the key factors. The length of time that, you know, it is notorious the length of time wills take to be probated. And that is triggered at most times by the lack of a proper financial plan, proper estate plan, sorry, all right? So I would say that, and I would say make sure you take advantage. If you're too old to qualify for insurance, there is an insurance benefit that is inherent in credit union membership. You have loan protection and life savings insurance. So you can acquire insurance even if your health has deteriorated and you don't normally qualify, by taking those kinds of actions. You know, there are these little things that most people are not to be aware of, but you can make a provision because these benefits are there. And I would want to recommend that, because, you know, the cost factor, like I say, very often a lot of people are saying, but I don't have the money to go to a lawyer to make this will. All right? And there are simple wills, but like I say, I recommend you get legal advice and financial advice. And that would assist, give you a better perspective in terms of how your situation can be addressed most effectively. Because, you know, everybody's situation is not the same.
Exactly.
There are significant differences in terms of size of estate, in terms of distribution of the estate, and all of these other factors are there.
Mr. Thomas, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure.
I have no doubt that our people on the online are just in awe and saying to themselves, you know what, these are things that I need to put in place if they have not done it already. And for whatever reason, a will has always been a will.
Yeah.
But you have opened us up to the importance of it and the simplicity of it as well. So we want to thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure, Nicole. Have a great day all.
Indeed. Thank you. Thank you. We continue this morning, and I'm very, very happy to have our final, should I say, an opening batsman to join us this morning to tell you a little bit about him. Mr. Polonais was born on the 16th of June 1964 and is on the brink of his 58th birthday. He began his public service career in 1982 at the age of 18 years in the Service Commission Department, where he acquired his general knowledge in public service employment procedures and protocols. He served at that department for a period of 10 years before assuming duties at the Social Welfare Division as a temporary Social Welfare Advisor 1. Mr. Polonais has been privileged to work in every technical office in the Social Welfare Division, with the exception of the post of Supervisor 3. He also held the position of Adoption Officer, leading to him managing the unit before it was transferred to the Ministry of Gender, Youth and Child Development. Mr. Polonais also functioned as Chairman and General Counsel Representative of the Social Welfare Officers Section under the Public Services Association for approximately 10 years, and also served as Chairman of the San Juan Lavantil Regional Social and Human Development Council under the poverty reduction program that once existed within the ministry. Mr. Polonais is nearing 40 years in the public service, but has continued to serve in the Social Welfare Division, as he is of the firm belief that God had placed him there on account of his genuine love for people and family. He declares that as far as he knows, since he's known himself, he has fashioned his life on the principle of treating with others as one would have others treat with them. He advocates this philosophy with every opportunity that presents itself, and he believes that once that approach is adopted, one would not only serve mankind admirably, but more importantly, please God. Please welcome Mr. Polonais.
Good morning, Nicole. The Honorable Minister, Donna Cox, my esteemed presenters, Mr. Thomas, and who I will describe as the pilot of this webinar, Dr. Blake, our online viewers, all protocols observed. Good morning again. So, I am here as a representative of the Social Welfare Division. The topic I am assigned in part is safeguarding the Senior Citizens Pension Grant, which commonly is referred to as SCP, tips for older persons and their nominee. Now, frankly speaking, when I was asked to present, I consider that, what could I say? Social welfare deals with grants, and in terms of elderly abuse, I didn't really see a connection at the very beginning. However, because of the experience I would have gained over my long tenure in the Social Welfare Division, I considered there are areas that I could venture into that probably someone may not have considered. So here I am. So to begin, let's examine the topic. Because what I plan to do, I have no literature before you, or before me rather, but basically I will be speaking from my experiences. I would want to add natural and most importantly, godly wisdom. So basically we are having a conversation in which I am going to take lead. Elder abuse is probably the most difficult type of abuse to measure. Oh, I'm starting with that statement because I want you to ponder it. Let's think about it. And as I sat waiting to present, these thoughts came to mind. Possible exposure to elder abuse starts when one is often young and in the prime of his or her life. Take note of that. I'll repeat it. Possible exposure to elder abuse starts when one is often young and in the prime of his or her life. I will expound on that as I go along. Abuse is often committed by a loved one where trust is taken for granted. Now we're talking about elder abuse here. Take note of that. The abuse comprises several categories. For the elderly, it could be physical, it could be psychological, and of course what I'm here to just share on is financial. However, my understanding and my belief is that where financial abuse is concerned, it hardly ever exists on its own. So more often, financial abuse would have a combination of physical involved, or probably or psychological, or probably all three. The victim often cannot speak out or would not speak out. Let's consider the person who might be incoherent and may not really be in a position or cannot really fend for himself or herself. But more importantly, let's consider the elderly who has, let's see, 3 children. 2 of them are abroad, they don't keep contact, and you may have 1 daughter or son living with you. And that son or daughter is precious because that's the person who you see on a regular basis, who keeps company with you, who probably is living with you. And it's not uncommon where you, as we're talking pension here, you may be in receipt of a pension grant, and you depend on that person to not only assist with that pension coming to you, but to manage your monies. And you may have the sense of self to recognize that these monies, when the check comes, or now we have a direct deposit system where it goes straight to your bank account, you realize that very little of that money is being utilized on your well-being. However, you're afraid to make mention of it because you're considering, well, if I tell Jean this, next thing Jean might say, look, you see me and you better keep your money or you find somebody else. And you want that relationship, you want that loved one to be close to you. So it's not uncommon that you subject yourself to that abuse. You keep it and you live with it. And unfortunately, right, you live oftentimes in that silence. So the abuse goes on. Who knows? Who is aware of that abuse that you're experiencing? Because on the outside, everything looks well. When they see Mommy and Jean, they see what looks like a loving relationship. All is well, Jean is attentive, but no one really knows what's happening inside. And the person, the pensioner, is very well aware, but remains silent. Oftentimes, financial abuse starts as the main culprit. And as such, safeguarding the senior citizen pension grant is of significant importance. This is easier said than done. Why is that so? Because there is no formula or sure signs to detect that abuse will result. As I said, the situation starts oftentimes with a face that looks as though everything is in place. You apply for your grant. Let's take the case of an applicant, and Mary is coming to assist you, right? And says that mom helping mommy to apply for this grant. And yes, Mary is all attentive. And at that point in time, you are not aware or what are the factors in place. Maybe you have 4 or 5 children, and they are very well of the opinion, but mommy doesn't need this grant, you know. We could well take care of mommy. But these are Mary's thoughts. I am unemployed. I don't have the means. You know what? I'll go help mommy get she pension. And the motive really behind Mary helping mommy get the pension is not for mommy's sake. Because when that pension comes, right, Mary might come forward as the nominee in a case where that grant is coming via check and she's managing those funds. But those funds are being managed not to the benefit of mommy. Unfortunately, Mary is pocketing most of that money. What to look for? So where an applicant or client is coherent, who seems to have the greatest interest in the grant? Is it a case that mommy is coming forward and saying that, look, I am of age and I'm looking forward for this grant, which is often the case? Or is it that loving daughter, Mary, who is coming to help Mary? It's not easy to tell. Oftentimes, that loved one that we look at is the person who have their own agenda and their own motive. What you can look for is only measured signs. Sometimes it tells a true picture, sometimes it doesn't. Mary's helping mommy. Mary doesn't have the means of her own, and Mary could well take this money and take advantage of the circumstances, but that may not be Mary's position. But on the other hand, that could very well be Mary's intent. How do you know? It is very difficult to tell. So, in pursuit of that grant, a good officer, in terms of the investigation processes, will look at when you're doing that application. You may look for signs in terms of if mommy is speaking confidently, if she's fluent, if she seems to be uncomfortable with the situation. So you look for situations and pointers. Oftentimes what a good officer will do is he will ask, Mary, could you just give me a little time with mommy alone, right? And if necessary, I will call you back into the picture. And you ask pertinent questions, right? It's not uncommon that one would have observed, or I would have observed as well over the years, that in that situation, you would observe sometimes the applicant suddenly, you see a sense where they're seemingly relaxed, where that person was not speaking much. There's a flow and in that conversation. So you sense and you pick up on these signs that may tell a picture that something is not right. Like I said, there is no real way of knowing if at that point in time how it's going to turn out. Is the involvement of the relatives, loved ones, seemingly seeking the best interests of the applicant or client? This is a question that comes to the fore and is very much aligned to the elder abuse. Supportive of the applicant and client, or perhaps controlling the applicant and client. Again, these are questions that you could look at or you try to find the answers to, but the answers are not easy. All right? Selecting a nominee. It is the right of the client to select a nominee of his or her choice. Now, I know people would have heard the term nominee before, and oftentimes there is a misconception that a nominee is that person who would be responsible for the encashment of your checks or treated with any matter relating to your grant. That nominee is to be chosen by the applicant or client. Right? And that needs to be made clear. So it does not have to be a relative. It can be a friend, the neighbor, and oftentimes that happens. The person will come and say, look, I don't want John. No, leave that for my relative. Leave that for the neighbor. I'll ask Jane. Because sometimes if they pick up, they are even aware up front that they don't want to put that trust in the hands of their children. When an applicant or client is incoherent, selecting a suitable nominee could be a most difficult task. And we have had situations where the pension is applied for, where the person is good, sound mind and body, but thereafter, sickness comes in, and then it's a difficult task going forward as to who should be that nominee. It's often difficult at that point in time to establish how that monies would be used and if the interest of that parent will be maintained. And that's usually a case where elder abuse or that financial abuse from that perspective comes into play. Consequently, significant responsibility lies with all concerned. We must all be guarded at all times, look for the signs that may point to the possibility of elder abuse, and in the case of financial abuse in particular, treatment with all ills require continuous vigilance by all. Let's go back to the statement. Possible exposure to elder abuse starts when one is often young and in the prime of his or her life. Consider this. We are young, carefree, living it up, and we have children, but little time and attention, little time or thought is being given to the possibility where my future takes me. So, in the prime of that life, we didn't consider these children are not being cared for in the way that we should. And then as time progresses, we get into old age. And those said children that we didn't look after in the prime of our lives, we are looking to these same children to take care of us. It's important that we look at and consider our future, that what we do in our youth usually will impact us. So when we don't care for them, when we are in a position to, and we get older and we're looking for them to care for us, guess what? Many of them don't come forward, and who come forward come with their own agendas, not to help you as the senior citizen, the one with the senior citizen's pension grant, but to help themselves. I thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so very much. Thank you so much, Mr. Troy Polanyi, this morning as we continue on estate planning and financial literacy to combat financial abuse of older persons. And Mr. Polanyi, one of the questions, and I'm pretty sure that was on the tip of most of the tongue of most of our persons online, and I'm not sure if you addressed it at that time, but how long does it take the process to how long does it take to process the senior citizens grant?
Yeah, that's a question that everyone asks. It's difficult to answer in part. I would put it this way. If everything is in place, an application can take about 3 months. Now, you would be aware, or you may not be aware, so I'll state it as a fact. The senior citizens pension, while it carries the connotation pension, right, is actually one of our grants. And the concept of the grant speaks to having to qualify for it. And even if you have qualified for it, you have to continue to qualify for that grant for it to continue to receive it. What we have found over the years, and what you may not know, when the grants was started, pension started in 1939, it was really very poor people applying for the grant, right? And it was quite manageable. But over the years, it has a significant measure of $3,500 per month. It's at a point where every person seeks that grant. Unfortunately, we have quite a number of persons who, in truth and in fact, when we start to investigate, they're really not eligible for the grant. And that's the challenges that we have. So what oftentimes results is the time is taken in trying to find the facts. Someone submits an application, and as you start to investigate, you realize they were disingenuous in the application. They said they had no income, and when you go to investigate, you realize they had properties and they're renting, and then you're trying to unfold everything to find the facts. So that is oftentimes where it is delayed. But if a straight case could take about 3 months,
Or 3 months.
to process.
And 3 months is not
Right.
bad at all to process and to be able to access your funding.
Right. But be mindful, we have quite a number of persons who are seeking the grant who really are not eligible. And as Trinbagonians, we are very innovative in finding ways to hide resources, to hide our status. For example, you ought to be residing in Trinidad to be able to qualify for the grant and to continue to receive it. And persons that actually live abroad, they come in for a period hoping that they can quickly have that grant process and go leave the country. And as we start investigating, starts to unfold. So when sometimes you request certain documents, they delay in submitting those documents because they know that the facts are coming to the fore. Right? So those are some of the delays that we have. We don't have as well some administrative challenges at times with some shortages of staff that could impact it. But the process in itself is investigative. And that factors in the time. So if a case is simple, straightforward, all the information comes before, it can be done in 3 months. But unfortunately, a significant number of cases are not like in that manner.
We have heard of cases where someone would be living in Trinidad and Tobago for 40 odd years, 50 odd years, thinking that they were eligible, only to find that they're not.
Well, the Act itself states the conditions that you have to satisfy. The age, I think everybody knows the age, and in the minds of some, it's almost thinking it's automatic. Once every 65 a year, I'm going for my pension.
Yes.
But even if you look at our application form, right, it tells you that your income must not be above a certain amount. As we speak, that ceiling is $5,500 per month to qualify for pension. And if you have income not exceeding that amount, the pension is not a fixed payment as well. So depending on what your income is, will determine how much pension you will receive. The full grant is $3,500 per month, right? But there's increments of $500, $1,500, $2,005, depending on where your income falls according to the bracket. And as I'm saying, so be mindful you can't be earning and get pension, senior citizens pension, because
you can be earning.
Yes, because there is a lot of misconceptions there, whereby people think if I'm working, I don't qualify. Hence where you see sometimes the information doesn't come forward
This is so
on the
important.
application. Your income must not exceed $5,500 per month. So
But you can be working and you will
yes,
still be able
because
to.
we are saying income, and this is not income from benefits only. Could be income from actually earning as well. Once it does not exceed $5,500 per month, you would have met that conditionality.
Yeah.
But there's also the residential qualification conditionality. And let me break that down in simple language. It really speaks to the length of time or the conditions under which you are living in the country. So one, your status must be legitimate. It must be legal. You must either be a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago or a legal resident. You also must satisfy what we refer to as ordinary residence. Ordinary residence speaks to time lived or living in the country, right? So the Act says that you must have lived here for the last 20 years or living in Trinidad and Tobago for the last 20 years. And if you have traveled, no doubt there's room for vacation and other means for traveling. That travel period must not exceed 5 years added up all together. All right, so first we have to see if you go abroad, you came back 2 years ago, right? We will see you're not here for the last 20 years. If you're here for 20 years, and when we check your travels, it adds up to more than 5 years in aggregate, you will see it don't meet that conditionality as well.
Okay.
But you get a second bite of the cherry, where it says if you have lived here for 50 years altogether. So then you give consideration under that 50-year proviso.
Yes.
Right?
I want to field another question. Could the ministry work along with the banks for the older persons to have beneficiary instead of a joint account, as some of the older people, their pension money are misused and they are not benefiting from the pension as they should?
Okay, so that is a question probably best be able to put in the court of the bank, because one of the things that I do know, the banks are not prepared to open an account for someone who is incoherent. Right? So they have strict conditionalities for opening an account. Right? And some of them, of course, I know they're not going to move
Yes.
in terms of their policies,
Yes.
where their policies come from.
Yeah.
Right? One of that nature is a matter of how it fits into their policies. So the bank per se might be in a position to respond to that, but social welfare or the ministry in particular would very well appreciate any opportunity or option to forge a relationship that will benefit the client.
Indeed.
Right?
Indeed.
Of course, it must be in accordance with our policies in terms of the conditionalities that you have to satisfy, you need to meet.
The older person who receive senior citizen pension and or NIS, are they in a position to receive a grant?
Yes, as I said earlier, you can have income, and as pays benefits of their pension is of course 3,000. So many of our clients receive national insurance and
Both.
senior citizen pension.
Correct.
They don't receive 3,005, but their income with receiving an NS, national insurance benefits, pension, would be entitled to 2,500, providing there's no other income, of course, because all income will be taken into consideration to determine what will be payable to that recipient,
Indeed.
if they meet the criteria at all.
Indeed, indeed. This has been very informative, and I know that those online have been encouraged, and because it's important. You know, the Bible talks about having knowledge and the importance of it, and so we have been informed today, and we can, most importantly, we know that we can depend on the ministry to give us any advice that we may need. So we have those numbers that you can call. And yes, on this World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, we seek to inform and to ensure that you are definitely treated the way that you ought to be treated. We continue, and this is where we're going to be fielding some questions to our facilitators, and I know that they are quite ready and raring and revving to go. There will be general questions right now, and let's see who is the first candidate for the question. Let's see. Let's see. You know, I am really, really delighted to be part and privy to this webinar, and actually to be part of it, because if I can talk a little bit personally about my situation, I remember many years ago, and that would have been about probably about 25 years ago, someone would have, they knew that my grandmother was ailing, and they knew where she lived, and they knew I was far away from her, and you know what? They came up with a wonderful scam. They went down to her and they said, listen, your granddaughter needs money now. You know, her car is stalled, and you need to give me $2,000. And there was my grandmother saying, $2,000? But you know what? I'm going to find it. And you know what? He said, but I think it's about $2,500 she may need, you know. And so it went on, and he actually got $2,500. And in those days, they didn't have cell phones, so I couldn't call her and tell her, no, you know, I'm okay. But the fact is, there's so many people that come up with scams for our elderly, and it's quite painful. It's amazing, and I want to encourage you to know that they are blessed. The elderly are blessed. You know, without them, we would not be here. So to think of scamming them rather than loving and respecting them is a no-no. At that time, I was not aware that I could have spoken to the ministry and found out. So hence the reason now you know your rights, and you know the scams, as we've been told about this morning by our facilitators. Are you ready for the questions, our facilitators? In the hot seat is Gart Thomas, And your question is, sir, is estate planning similar to making a will?
It's a part of, making a will is a part of the estate planning process. It is one of the financial instruments that is required to do a proper estate plan. So the making of the will is a subsection of the estate plan. The estate plan is the big thing that is treating with all of your assets. And the will is one of the instruments that you can use in order to pass on your assets. It's just one, because remember I also spoke about beneficiary designations and stuff like that.
Is estate planning? If someone suddenly gets married, does a previous will still stand?
Yeah, unless the person who has made the will changes it, it will still stand. The fact that they are now remarried, I suspect that is what you're saying, that they are now married to another person, does not automatically qualify that other person to be a beneficiary in that will.
Okay.
The person who has made the will before has to go and change the will, you know, if they want to change the beneficiaries of the will.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. I want to invite presenter Dr. Hyacinth Blake to the podium as we field the questions from you. And your question is, what are the risk factors of EFA?
Well, sadly, women are more likely to be the victims of EFA. To be honest, based on the statistics, it's partly because women outlive men. And so there's a greater chance that a female will report. There's also the issue of their age. The older someone gets, and this is not cast in stone, but this is based on the international data. The older someone gets, they might be the victim of elder abuse because they've lost their ability, possibly, to engage with the financial institutions and so on, and treat with the nuts and bolts of what's going on with their assets. Now, that is not, as I said, cast in stone. We have some centenarians still up and going to work, right? So gender, age, also lack of knowledge, which we're addressing today. Persons who have caregivers who might be unemployed and not getting any source of funding. So it's good to do like Uncle Wilton and have a clear relationship as to what you are going to return to those who are supporting you, especially if they have no other source of income. Don't let that be something that's unspoken, so it's not something that is abused. We also have the health of the elder. If they have a cognitive challenge, that might be a problem, or if they are isolated. And then there are issues of self-worth. If you're accustomed being abused, that might be a challenge in terms of standing up. So we want to empower you. So call us, we will help.
Dr. Hyacinth, this may be a redundant question, but I'm still going to ask it. What motivates people to commit EFA?
Some of it was picked up in the stories from Mr. Polanyi and also in the cases that I highlighted. I would reduce them to about 4 key factors: retribution, entitlement, socialization, and caregiver stress. So retribution, as Mr. Polanyi shared about Mary, or even the case about someone who was not treated well by an elder, and then at the end of the day, they're the only one around that the elder is calling for assistance. And so there might be a sense of, well, I need to get back what is mine because they didn't invest in me while I was growing up, if it's a child or so. And that's really a sad state of affairs. So there would be an issue of possible reactive abuse also. And entitlement, you might be the heir apparent, and you think, well, okay, I don't want money being spent that I am going to inherit for your health and well-being. You have enough to go to a private hospital, but are sending it to public, you know, and that sort of thing. And socialization, they might have been the victims of abuse themselves, or they might be engaged in a heavy caregiving load, and they feel that it is their right to be able to access resources. So all these things must be managed.
There was another question that just came in, and it was, can we use a hand signal? Is there any hand signals that we can use, that the elderly can use to say, listen, I need help?
Well, that's something we could explore as a division, bearing in mind that if the elders know it, someone else might. Yes. And the reality is some of our elders might have some vision or other challenges, and so they might not not all, but some may not be aware that others are seeing them make a signal. But there are various ways, like for instance, those imprinted images that persons can see. They have it for child abuse cases at the level of the child and so on, where the contact numbers are there. We can engage with our disability affairs unit and so on to have a more inclusive approach to ensuring that the older persons can signal. And we welcome your suggestions as to how to do that for all persons. Thank you very
Great.
much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We call Mr. Troy Pollinay to the podium. Some questions for him coming up, and one of the questions: when applying for the pension grant, could the nominee be named when a pensioner dies?
Yes, that.
What are the? It's still coming in.
Sorry.
What are the steps? Okay, I'll read that again. When applying for the pension grant, could the nominee be named? That's number one, but we have another question for you coming up right after.
Okay, should I go forward?
Yes, go right ahead.
Yes, so usually it's very commonplace that when someone is applying, they would identify a nominee, because you have persons applying for the grant that may not have the capacity to encash a check on their own. So on a nominee is quite commonplace oftentimes when applying. It also may result the person who had it was able to do so, but as years pass, their circumstances have changed. They may have become, let's say, incapacitated. I don't want to say incoherent, because that's really is a nightmare story with a nominee. When you cannot identify who you want to be the nominee, it comes right back to the elder abuse question. It's almost up for grabs, and it's very difficult to ascertain who should be that nominee. But the question of the nominee, as time progresses, would become less and less of a need, because as we are hoping that persons could make efforts to have their money directly deposited in their accounts. And I think that as well, apart from safeguarding the payment, I think that will also serve as a tool to avoid that elder abuse. Because when money is in your hand cash, even we know stories, people, they go into the bank and they spout out the elderly gentleman. So on the way, when he coming home, they confront him with it. We know these stories is not unusual. So send your money directly to your bank account, right? And it would eliminate a lot of the challenges and even the issue of probably having the need for a nominee. Because if you permit me, when he would ask me about the conditions or the criteria to be met, a very important factor that must be met is one of residing in the country. I was speaking on the residential qualification. I mentioned your status must be legal, legitimate. I mentioned how long you need to be living, but you also need to be currently living in the country. And that's critical, because we have a lot of people, we are aware, and we're working on that to try to weed out, some of the corruption there, right? In treating with, those persons who may be actually living abroad and having the benefit of both the grant here, benefits here being benefited from here, Trinidad and Tobago, country of birth, or where they would have acquired their residential status, right, the citizenship, as well as living outside. So that's a critical thing that I just want to mention here. Yeah.
And a final question for you. Well, I'm not too sure if it's the final, because, but let's take this one. When a pensioner dies, what are the steps to stop the pension? And if a pension check is on the way, can it be cashed? Can it be stopped?
Right. So the pension grant, once you die, any check that is received after that month of check, the month of that check in which you died, you are not entitled to it. So it's like the pension dies with you. All right? The way our system is designed, if you'd say you die in June, the payment for July is already in the pipeline, so to speak. So there will oftentimes be the need to return that payment, whether it goes directly to your bank account. The bank we have arrangement in place. For the most banks, we're still trying to smoothen that area. They return that monies. And if you receive that check in hand, the relative is expected to return that check. But payment up to the month of which you are alive is an entitlement to you. So if you go back to what Mr. Thomas was saying, that payment, if you were alive and that you were able to encash that check, right? Or let's say it goes into a bank account, right? There would be the old concept of estate, right? By ways of letters of administration, or if there's a will perchance, well, I don't think you could write in the pension check as a will, but by way of at least letters of administration, your beneficiaries would be able to claim the proceeds of that in accordance with the law.
Then coming up for you, Mr. Polanyi, if it takes approximately 3 months to receive the grant, could persons apply 3 months in advance before their 65th birthday?
So I'm laughing because the first conditionality you have to satisfy is that you must be, that's stated in the law, you must be 65 at the point in time in which you are submitting a claim or an application for the grant. What our system allows for is payment of arrears from the date from which you will have submitted an application. So we in June again, you applied in June, right? And it takes a while to process the pension. As I said, it's investigative. It goes beyond that 3 months. You do not lose. Pension is payable 1 month from date of application, once you meet that criteria. You applied in June, and let's say we complete that pension in October. Once at the time when you applied, you met the conditionalities, it would be payable with effect from July. So our system always carries arrears for this with regards to the first payment.
Okay, and this might be a good time to wish you happy birthday, sir. We do believe that you're celebrating in the next couple of months.
Well, actually in 1 day, tomorrow.
All right.
Yes, thank you
We
very
will
much.
break out in birthday song right after the webinar, for sure. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Well, this indeed has been quite fruitful for us this morning, and I'm pretty sure that you've gotten a lot of food for thought. We have the numbers that we can call, and I'm going to give you those numbers again. If you have any problems, any issues pertaining to someone that you may feel that is abused, maybe you are the person that is being abused, feel free to call at any time for information. 623-2608, extension 2009 and 2010. You can also call the toll-free hotline at 800 OPIC, 800-6742. You can also email the Division of Aging at opic@social.gov.t, and we are getting ready to bring to the close of this wonderful, wonderful webinar. And I certainly want to thank, before we have the official thank you, I want to say a special thank you to Mr. Garth Thomas. He spoke on the benefits of estate planning for older persons. We heard from Dr. Hyacinth Blake, financial abuse of older persons in Trinidad and Tobago. We heard about what happens when you don't make a will. Yes, and that was Mr. Garth Thomas once again. And we also heard about safeguarding the senior citizens grants and the tips for older persons and their nominee. And we now await for the vote of thanks.
Master of Ceremonies and Moderator, Ms. Nicole Larson, Permanent Secretaries of the Ministry, Ms. Jacqueline Johnson, joining us virtually, and here with us, Ms. Sheila Cicheran, Deputy Permanent Secretaries, Ms. Jasmine Pascal, and Mrs. Wendy Guy Hernandez, Heads of Division of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, distinguished presenters, panelists, Mr. Garth Thomas, Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Hyacinth Blake, Director, Division of Aging, Mr. Troy Paulinas, Social Welfare Division, other staff members at the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, our most valued participants from home and abroad joining us, online, members of the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, pleasant day to all of you. It is indeed my privilege and pleasure to say thank you on behalf of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services for your participation in this event and for standing with us in solidarity against elder abuse. As we end this webinar, I take this opportunity to acknowledge the many persons who have contributed in various ways to ensure that this event was a success. We achieved the objectives of the webinar, which included to sensitize and bring awareness of financial literacy for older persons and provide meaningful and practical information on the preparation of wills and estate planning for senior citizens. This was all done in an effort to reduce elder financial abuse in Trinidad and Tobago by encouraging proper reporting to OPIC and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. I would like to first express sincere thanks and appreciation to Senator the Honorable Donna Cox, Minister of Social Development and Family Services, who continues to be a national champion for older persons and other vulnerable persons in Trinidad and Tobago. Minister, we thank you. Thank you to our Permanent Secretary, Ms. Sheila Sicharan, for the warm welcome and for the feature presentation. Her guidance and commitment to ensuring that the work of the Division of Aging is accomplished with excellence is greatly appreciated. To our distinguished panel of presenters, Mr. Gar Thomas, facilitator of the Central Bank's National Financial Literacy Program, Central Bank Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Troy Pollinares, Director, Social Welfare Division, and Dr. Hyson Blake, Director, Division of Aging, we thank you for sharing your knowledge with us and for being part of this initiative. The planning of this event is due to the hard work of staff members of the Division of Aging and other departments in the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, who worked tirelessly throughout the past few months to host this interactive webinar. They include Ms. Janika Gomes, Ms. Cullen Joseph, Mr. Ernest Webster, Mrs. Hannah Ramrup Millet, Mr. Farouk Boppa, and Mrs. Rina Das Ramkisoon. From the Corporate Communications and Education Unit team, Mrs. Natalie Walters, Mrs. Talia Alexander, Ms. Candice Lee, Ms. Chanel Caraballo, and Mr. Thorsten Planty. From the Information and Communications team, Mr. Paul Canny, Mr. Addis Sigobin, Mr. Kevin Gibbs, Mr. Everall Mack, and Mr. Shalon Deirsaran. From the Social Investigations Division, Mr. Addis Sahadiu. From the NGO unit, Mistress Alicia Cooper Warner. Policy Program Planning and Development Division, to our esteemed project coordinator, Ms. Shanice John Telesford, we thank you for your insight, technical skill, and expertise, which help us to successfully achieve the objectives of this initiative. We are also immensely grateful to our sign language interpreters, Ms. Niobe Rodriguez and Ms. Rian Houghton. To our illustrious chairman, Ms. Nico Larson, our versatile and hard-working producer, Ms. Lizelle James, and our webinar service provider, Mr. Karen Lamassie, thank you for giving generously of your time and technical expertise to ensure the success of this webinar. We also extend special thanks to the online participants. We thank you for logging on and engaging us via our virtual social media platforms and look forward to your continued partnership as we work towards ensuring that our older persons in Trinidad and Tobago are safe. We encourage persons to call the Division of Aging toll-free hotline at 800 OPIC, that is 800-6742. If you suspect that you or someone else or someone you know is a victim of elder abuse, you can call. Alternatively, you can email us at opic@social.gov.tt
and anonymous submissions are also welcome. We also invite you to continue to visit the social media pages of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services for information that will assist you with identifying and preventing elder abuse. Videos of today's webinar can be accessed on the Ministry's Facebook page, and the PowerPoint presentations can be obtained from our website at www.social.gov.tt. May God bless all of you, and thank you.
Thank you very much for that vote of thanks. That is Ms. Sophia Kennedy from the Division of Aging. I would just like to remind you again that for further information, you can contact us, and we just want to make sure that we have those numbers up so that we can give you those numbers. What are those numbers again? Those numbers are, and I want you to take heed, those numbers for more information: 623-2608, extension 2009 and 20110. Or call the toll-free hotline. We are awaiting your calls. Toll-free hotline at 800-OPIC, 800-6742. You can also email the Division of Aging at opic@social.gov.tt. And as I close, as I say, thank you so much for this opportunity on this day, Elder Abuse Awareness Day. I want to leave you with something from one of the bards of Trinidad and Tobago. And he says, in song, I'm not going to sing, I'm just going to say it, I can't. He says, "Blessed are the elders, they hold the key of experience. Blessed are the elders, they are like trees of endurance." And he goes on to say, without the root, you don't have the tree. And this song was made, I think, maybe about 31 years ago, and it's still applicable today, that we are to treat our elders with love and respect. Thank you so much. May God richly bless you. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Affecting older persons. On this day, to care for those who once cared for us is one of the highest honors, according to Tia Walker. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, in keeping with our mandate to help, empower, and transform lives, joins with the international community in recognition of the United Nations World Elder Abuse Awareness Day 2022. World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, observed annually on June the 15th, aims to raise awareness about the range of issues affecting older persons. On this day, we join to care for those who once cared for us is one of the highest honors, according to Tia Walker. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, in keeping with our mandate to help, empower, and transform lives, joins with the international community in recognition of the United Nations World Elder Abuse Awareness Day 2022. World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, observed annually on June the 15th, aims to raise awareness about the range of issues affecting older persons. On this day, we join people all over the world to voice our opposition to any form of abuse of older persons in our population. The United Nations International Plan of Action described elder abuse as a public health and human rights issue. They indicated that globally, we have an aging population, and it is projected that the number of older persons will increase to 1.4 billion by 2030. In this country, we also have an aging population. More persons are living to 100 years and beyond. Many of them are unable to advocate for themselves or may be afraid to speak out against any abuse they might experience. The COVID-19 pandemic also presented several challenges for older persons, not just in terms of its impact on their health, but also in regards to their vulnerability to neglect, abandonment, and abuse. Furthermore, the pandemic has placed older persons at a greater risk of poverty, discrimination, and isolation. Recognizing the varied challenges some older persons experience, we have to be more proactive in caring for and protecting them. As the ministry that has been tasked with the responsibility of maintaining the social structure of our country, I wish to condemn incidents of abuse and appeal to members of our population to collaborate with government and all other stakeholders in restoring security and dignity to our elders. I wish to encourage individuals, families, and all citizens, if you see an older person being abused, say something. Don't hesitate to report the warning signs of elder abuse in your homes and within your communities. The Division of Agents 800 OPIC hotline is available for persons to report incidents of elder abuse, mistreatment, and neglect. Anonymous reports can be made to the Division of Agents hotline as well as via email at opic@social.gov.tt. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services urges all families and communities to foster a more caring and safe environment for our elders. It is our responsibility to love, respect, and protect those who tirelessly nurtured and cared for us, who contributed to our nation's development, and continue to serve as pillars of support to our societal foundations such as the family, faith-based, and community organizations. May God bless you. I thank you.